6.
Somewhere around Tulsa, we stayed at a Plaza Motel, and I was somewhat disappointed because I didn't see any Indians, and neither did I see any oil wells, but they were to come later. The next day we continued west, and Tulsa looked pretty much like what around St. Louis looked like. It didn't look too much different. I was, I won't say disappointed, but I was expecting something different. But as we went west and approached Oklahoma City, it started looking very different than anything I'd seen before. The soil started becoming very bright red, and red orangey soil of a color that I'd never seen, and I was very intrigued by that. And my dad took the 48 Chevy and drove right through Oklahoma City, which Route 66 did, and lo and behold, there on the state capitol lawn were oil wells. And we looked at these and marveled at them, and they were pumping, and here were oil wells. Now I wanted to see Indians, and hadn't yet seen any Indians. We continued west and got west of Oklahoma City, where you start climbing onto the high plains. It starts getting sparsely populated, it becomes desolate, and it becomes arid and dry. And
across western Oklahoma, these red soils and red sandstone beds would become prominent.
getting onto the high plains of western Oklahoma, the high plains that are dissected by streams into canyons. Here's some of these that parallel Route 66, which is just about at the border between Oklahoma and Texas. Around Shamrock, Texas is where you enter Texas into the Texas Panhandle. And these pictures were taken into arroyos and canyons carved out of probably Triassic sediments, Triassic red beds, and also sediments of what's called the Ogallala Formation, which is Miocene, which represents sediments which were peeled off of the Rocky Mountains during one of the major periods of uplift of the Rockies during the Miocene about 15 million years ago. This is a barite rose. They come from Permian strata around. We got this at a rock shop on the way out to the trips, a rock shop along Route 66, which used to have lots and lots of rock shops in the 1950s and I guess in the late 40s as well. Barite roses come out of the Permian strata, the Permian red beds. We went on across the Texas Panhandle, which seemed to go on forever, and it was flat and boring.
Next day into Albuquerque, New Mexico. In 1950, Albuquerque was a small city. The uranium boom was just beginning, and New Mexico was one of the areas hot on prospecting for that material which would fuel the atomic age. The 1950s were optimistic about atoms, neutrons, and protons, and anything atomic. Even bazooka bubblegum was the atomic bubblegum, and little kids like me were being weaned on the appropriateness of bombs by red, white, and blue bomb pops. From Albuquerque, we headed northward up to Taos. Taos, New Mexico was an old Spanish settlement that dates back to the 18th century. My mother fell in love with a lot of the old churches there and the old buildings and the art community that characterizes Taos, with a lot of artists. Here we are just east of Taos in Cimarron Canyon. This was a igneous intrusive that I think is made of diorite that shows a lot of jointing, and that's me standing at the base of that talus slope. And then on back west of Albuquerque to head on to the high plains and the Colorado Plateau. Head west where the really desert and arid conditions started.
My dad inquired around Albuquerque as to what would be some necessary accoutrements in crossing the desert or in heading west, and he was advised to purchase a water bag. And the water bag was a canvas bag that was hung on the front of the radiator of the car. And I recall he purchased 2 of them. They were Eagle water bags, and they were filled with water, and as you would drive, the water would evaporate and the bag would remain cool and would help cool your radiator.
This was really different terrain than I had ever seen, and it was new to Gene and Len as well. Getting onto the high plains of the Colorado Plateau, the deserts, the arroyos and canyons of canyon country in the Colorado Plateau. Lots of very red sandstones, Permian and Triassic red beds. Again, a world very different from that we were used to in Missouri. These red beds are Permian and Triassic in age, and Route 66 went right across and through them. Triassic red beds are very typical of the desert Southwest, and the red sediments of the Triassic, which are a worldwide occurrence, have always been very puzzling.